Hi, my name's Derek M. Cook from Dice Monster Dice. I'm also the person who created Harsch Tables Volume 1, a successful Kickstarter that was run earlier this year as part of this year's Zine Quest. And a lot of you are responsible for making it a successful Kickstarter campaign. Now, this video is going out to everybody on the Dice Monster Dice YouTube channel. So for those of you who didn't kick in on Kickstarter or are just now joining us here at Dice Monster Dice, what Harsch Tables Volume 1 is supposed to be is a collection of tables, new random generation tables for your role-playing game, whether you're playing the world's most famous or popular role-playing game or some other OSR style or non-D&D role-playing game. This should work for you. It was designed to be system agnostic, so it's flexible. However, it is part of the Harsch Kingdom campaign setting that will be coming out either later this year or sometime next year, kind of depending on scheduling and a few other factors. And the Harsch Kingdom campaign setting is designed for Dungeons & Dragons. So you may see some terms that are D&D specific in the Harsch Tables Volume 1. What kind of tables can you expect to see in Harsch Tables Volume 1? Well, there are three main tables. First of all, there's a random item generator, like a random treasure generator. Now, I know that there are some excellent random treasure generation tables in the back of the Dungeon Master's Handbook, as well as online and several other products on places like DriveThruRPG and DM's Guild. What makes this one different, well, is that it's written by me. Almost all of the entries on this list were created by myself. There were a couple created by my partner, Mike Marisitz, but for the most part, these are all from up here. And up here, well, it's Harsch Kingdoms. So, you know, they're going to have a certain flavor, and I'm really excited to share these with you. What are you going to see on this thing? Well, some things are useless, some things are worthless, some things are valuable. There are some artifacts on here, including one of my personal favorites, a sword that I'm calling the Stone Bastard. It's a hand-and-a-half bastard sword that when you use and score a critical hit, it turns your opponent to stone. Yes, I know that's very powerful. That's why I'm calling it an artifact. But there's a handful of artifacts on here, some magical items, some new gems, some new treasures, things along those lines. And there are even some illustrations for some of the items on this table. If you don't know what something looks like, well, there might be an illustration in the zine for you. The other two tables in Harsch Tables Volume 1 are a random encounter or random event table, as well as what we're calling the magic misfire table, because we're a big believer in critical fails and magic misfires, and I think you'll enjoy what we have in the works. What we're talking about in this video is the first table, the random item generator table or random treasure generation table. There are 100 different items that you can roll on this table. You roll a 1d100 or a percentile, look it up, and boom, there you go. Now, this table is a little bit different than the other two tables in the book because there are three columns, not just a number and then an item, but also a price. I wanted to do my best to make sure that each one of these items, with the exception of the artifacts like the Stone Bastard, have a price associated with them. Because, you know, as a player, you might not want that piece of coprolite. Or as a DM, you might want to know how much that broken dagger is worth. So I tried my best to come up with some accurate, to the game, gold piece and so on prices for these items. And where I really wanted to do my best here is to make sure that the random gems that I have on here, and there aren't many, but there are a handful of gems on this table, and I wanted to make sure that they were priced accordingly to, well, the world's most famous role-playing game. Not every gem is listed on the gem tables in the Dungeon Master's Guide. I have some new gems that I've added to the list. I mentioned the coprolite. Do you know what a coprolite is? Well, it's fossilized poop. But, you know, it is a gem, and it does have a value, and for obvious reasons, it's not included in the Dungeon Master's Guide. So I wanted to make sure that I came up with something that was pretty much in line with what the designers of D&D had in mind for their prices for gems. So the first thing I did was look in the Dungeon Master's Guide at the existing gems that are currently available in a standard D&D game. There are a total of 52 of them, and I took them all and put them on a spreadsheet. Also on the spreadsheet, I included the gold piece price of these gems. Next, and I'll admit this is not a very scientific or thorough way to do this, but for our purposes I think it works, I did some quick searching online to figure out what a real-world price would be for these various gems. I entered those numbers into the spreadsheet and then organized that data by the real-world cost equivalent. Interesting note, I double-checked my first edition AD&D DMG, and it turns out that all of the gems that are in the 5th edition Dungeon Master's Guide also appeared in the 1st edition AD&D Dungeon Master's Guide, and the prices are the same. There really hasn't been a change or an adjustment to the gold piece cost. There are a few gems in the 1st edition book that aren't in the 5th edition DMG, but for the most part, these gem tables have remained unchanged since 1979. Back to what we're doing here. I then took the gems and the gem items from the Harsch tables and put them on the spreadsheet, and then did a quick bit of Googling to find out what those would be worth in US dollars. And then plugged those gems into the existing gem list that I had already created using the gems from the DMG, and just kind of saw where these various gems fell. And ultimately, that's how I decided that the coprolite, which appears in the Harsch tables, would be worth somewhere around the same as a piece of jasper, which, according to the DMG, is one of the 50 gold piece gemstones. And for fun, I decided not to stick to the 10 gold piece, 50 gold piece, 100 gold piece way of pricing these gems. I wanted to be a little bit more precise, a little bit more unique, and while it might make a little bit more math at the game table, I think it does give these items in the Harsch tables a little bit more flavor and character to set them aside from the quote-unquote standard Dungeons & Dragons loot or treasure experience. I want to thank everybody for their support and for their patience as we get the Harsch tables prepared for launch. It's still on track to be released sometime in September as originally promised, but I'm doing my best to make it the beginning of September as opposed to the end of September. Stay tuned to this YouTube channel and follow the Kickstarter campaign even though it's closed. You can follow it online and still keep up to date with what's going on. Also, Dice Monster Dice has a Facebook and Twitter presence, so you can always follow us over there as well. My name is Derek M. Cook, and remember, when the dice say no, you gotta go. Again, I know that the numbers that I found online for how much a piece of coprolite would be worth, as well as a piece of jasper and all the other gems in the DMG, as well as the Harsch tables, not a very scientific approach. I just looked at a handful of numbers on some gem buying websites, or in some cases even on places like Etsy, to come up with average or a number that roughly represents what the gem would be worth, and went from there.